In the following, we will take a look at a very simple but powerful practice. As a matter of fact, we can't even really call this a practice. What I'm going to share is the practice of non-interference. We could really, unironically, call this doing nothing. So why is it powerful? Why is it effective in specifically allowing ourselves to naturally release emotions and thoughts? We are all very familiar with something arising in our experience, which we could call a neurotic fixation, a kind of tightness and density of emotion, a rapidity of thoughts. Our usual orientation when something like that arises is that something needs to be done. We're operating from the assumption that we have to solve this as some kind of problem. The fact that this emotion is arising, let it be fear or anxiety or a sadness, we see that as an issue. We think that's something to resolve and to fix. And we are taught to address our emotions in this way from a very early age. And we very often never even question it. We never question if it is, in fact, the skillful thing to do, to be so over-involved in our emotional lives. As a psychologist, I certainly had a kind of learning progress in this regard as well, because it's quite easy to listen to a client and adopt the mode of scanning for problems to solve. But what if that isn't really the smartest and wisest thing to do? So in the following, we will simply learn how to implement non-interference as a useful resource for those times where we seemingly feel overwhelmed, where emotions are just seemingly too much, where thoughts are incredibly burdensome. A very powerful and simple metaphor to illustrate this concept of non-interference is to look at the behavior of water. When there is movement in water, it is there for a little bit, expresses itself naturally, and then water simply returns to its natural state. It is quite normal for there to be movement, but it is also normal for that movement to express itself naturally and return to resting. Very often, if we apply this to our emotional lives, we get very, very involved. We stir up the waters of our emotions, even more we could say. Our heavy-handed and neurotic involvement, however, only serves to cause even more movement, even more turbulence. Non-interference, we could say, is simply the art of being natural and present and allowing the water to express itself fully, naturally, and come to a spontaneous rest. We see that no effort is required, no involvement is needed. The water simply has the property of expressing, releasing its activity naturally, and coming to rest. Of course, none of this is to say that non-interference is some kind of general life philosophy, that we have to be passive and disengaged in our lives. That is not what I'm suggesting at all. The practice of non-interference is something very specific, a tool which only comes into action when there isn't that natural release of emotion. When that is there, we are just simply being uncontrived. There's nothing to do. we are fully engaged and present with life. We are involved and able to respond proactively and respond to situations exactly as they present themselves. If, however, you feel that this natural release isn't there, that there is a fixation occurring, then turning non-interference into a kind of practice can be the smart move. As soon as we have a degree of openness, however, the practice very easily turns into a non-practice, meaning that we don't have to apply effort. It's happening on its own. So having said that, let's turn non-interference into 3 easy steps which help us to move from this neurotic fixation into naturalness and openness. What can be very helpful as a first step is to just create a bit more space and openness. And I really like to do this using the visual field. So right now, I'm just inviting you to create some space, allow the visual field to open and relax. Awareness is opening to the periphery, we could say. So this is a simple first move of opening in a very neutral sense field. And as we are here in this more expanded and open way, just lightly appreciate the calm that comes to the foreground. The pleasure of just being a bit more open, of having a bit more breathing room, even if it isn't much. What can be helpful here as well to allow a sort of aesthetic appreciation to come to the foreground. Again, it's not about forcing this, but simply allowing yourself to take in the entirety of your visual field and just lightly noticing the beauty in it. The beauty in seeing, being open, allowing things to be as they are. Now, the second step should come quite easily. Now we're simply dropping the effort of being open, of being relaxed, and we're simply allowing this openness to be here spontaneously, uncontrived. See how in fact it requires no effort whatsoever to be in this open, relaxed, pleasant way. And finally, we're simply being with everything that is arising without any effort, without any contrivance, without any need to embrace or to detach. Simply resting naturally and allowing experience to present itself exactly the way it is. That means, of course, that the entirety of my visual field is allowed to be exactly the way it is. It means that every thought can arise. In this moment, there are no preferences. There aren't good and bad thoughts thoughts are simply given their natural space. Likewise, all sensations are simply allowed to arise. It doesn't matter if there are feelings of a lot of intensity. Whatever it is in your field of experience right now, it is allowed to be there. We're not rejecting it, nor are we accepting it. Just for this short time, there is no need to get involved. No need to try to manipulate our experience in any way. Experience is simply unfolding right now. Unfolding in this openness. Allowed to express itself fully. And notice how experience is constantly shifting and morphing. As soon as something is arising, it's already in the process of dissolving, of naturally releasing itself. The amazing thing to realize here is that we don't need to do anything for emotions to spontaneously release themselves. This is just the nature of all phenomena. They arise, they shift and morph, and then they dissolve again. Absolutely nothing needs to be done here. It's all already happening. And it's happening without any effort whatsoever. So just rest naturally, with no need to go anywhere. Now, what we could see is that emotions have a natural half-life. Like any phenomenon, it's not going to stay. It will vanish. And it doesn't require any doing on our part for that to happen. But what's amazing in its own right, and just, if not more notable, is that we don't need to wait for something to dissolve in order to be free of it. As soon as we're being natural and uncontrived, whatever is occurring for us ceases to be a problem. It simply is what is. There's nothing to be done about it. Nothing to do but simply to be here and enjoy.